Fresh from the slipways of Cockatoo Dockyard, the latest addition to the Australian Navy, HMAS Tobruk, showed her form in a series of tough trials in testing weather off the coast. The 3,300-ton battle-class destroyer presented a striking spectacle as she knifed her way through heavy seas. Tobruk was the first of our destroyers to carry fully enclosed gun turrets, equipped with power-operated 4.5 guns capable of being directed against hostile aircraft as well as enemy ships. Tobruk, an honored name for a hard-hitting Navy Greyhound, proud carrier of the White Ensign. And in mid-Atlantic, an American aircraft carrier, USS Siboney, figured in a hectic refueling exercise at the height of a storm. Even the flight deck of the mighty flat top felt the rush of water as she tossed and squirmed. Snaking flexible pipelines fed thousands of gallons of vital oil under pressure as the supply ship maneuvered within a rope's throw. A meal at sea for the hungry fuel tanks of an aircraft carrier. Heard Island, 3,200 miles southeast of Melbourne and center of one of the wildest areas in the Antarctic Ocean. A mere speck on the map, but the goal of HMAS Australia, called in to an unusual mercy mission. A Polish migrant doctor had been stricken with appendicitis down at the blizzard-swept geophysical camp. 2 merchant ships had been driven back, but the cruiser's navigator, Lieutenant Commander Swan, guided the cruiser bang on to the lonely scientific outpost, and Heard Island appeared barren and snow-clad, jutting out of the unfriendly sea. Boarding is a touchy business in summertime, but in deep winter, tension and apprehension was not relaxed until the sick doctor was assisted aboard to the comfort and warmth of the cruiser's sick bay, an operation, and reunion with his wife a few days later at Fremantle. A 6,000-mile round trip by a cruiser to save the life of a migrant doctor. Yes, it was a naval year. In picturesque Akaroa Harbour in New Zealand, units of the Australian and New Zealand navies gathered in preparation for sea exercises. And with war in Korea, the aircraft carrier Sydney played the major role. Captain Dowling was on the bridge of the flagship following every move of sailor and pilot, and particularly the Batman, guiding beacon for pilots as they come in to take a terrific jolt. The arrestor wires catch the aircraft at 90 miles an hour, bringing them to a sudden stop, but not always without a bruise. And this time, a punch on the nose. The effect of such a sudden stop places a great strain on pilots. And in America, with rocket flights into space looming, extensive experiments were carried out on a special rocket sled. Elaborate equipment inside the cabin recorded the reaction of the human guinea pig to the sudden transformation from go up to near the speed of sound barrier and back to whoa. An automatic camera recorded the physical effects on the passenger. Gee, how many G's hit you, fella? Thought you'd burst, eh? But he didn't, and more valuable data was gained in the science of rocketry. At Manly Beach, training exercises for CMF searchlight crews provided local lifesavers with a rare opportunity to indulge in night surfing. Surfboat crews were quickly mustered, and surf skis manned as the Army obligingly provided artificial sunlight to illuminate the combers. Yes, the Army boys were certainly on the beam for these night riders of the surf. But searchlights weren't necessary when these Victorian divers turned on a clowning act in bright sunshine. It looks crazy, but all the skill of the expert is required to perform these aerobatic antics without injury. A bike ride is always popular, but note the split-second timing as the clown parts company with the bike to ensure a safe double landing. And this was billed as the latest version of the Indian rope trick. Think I'll do a trick? No, I don't think I will. Golfing followers swarmed around the course at the Australian club for a demonstration by leading professionals. Burly Ozzie Pickworth was one of the first to hit off, and this slow-motion shot shows us the style that won him so many championship events. On one of these occasions, he decided to explore the overseas circuits. Dropping his final putt, Pickworth becomes the first Australian ever to win the Irish Open Championship. Back for his fourth Australian tour was South Africa's Bobby Locke. The British Open champion was matched with Norman van Nuyder in an exhibition at the Royal Sydney Golf Club. A great day for the gallery as the rotund visitor displayed his immaculate iron technique. And then the rains came, at a stage when the Von was 7 under par and Locke was 1 under a tree. Although the record wet had turned the cricket ground into a quagmire, 67,000 braved the weather to see the third and final rugby league test between England and Australia. With one victory each, this game was to decide the Ashes. Rarely has a game been played in any part of Australia in worse conditions. The ball was like a cake of soap and play almost wholly confined to the forwards. Only by their shape and mannerisms was it possible to distinguish the players. 26 All Blacks slipping and sliding around the field. 5'8" Frank Stanmore made a brilliant break and out went the ball to burly winger Ron Roberts. Englishman Hilton made a do-or-die effort to stop the long-striding winger, but Roberts dived for the corner. A winning try which is frequently recalled in discussions on highlights of Test football. Full time and the crowd went wild with delight. Australia had taken the Test series and won the coveted Ashes for the first time in 30 years. Believe it or not, it had been a clean game. One of the vanquished, English forward Griper, even managed to raise a smile. And the Australians gleefully shouldered their captain, the little master Clive Churchill, from the mud patch. A thrilling end to the memorable Test series of 1950. In the far northwestern corner of the continent is a 200,000 square mile sector known as the Kimberleys, a land rich in vast natural pastures, an admirable stamping ground for cattle. The phrase air beef was coined by a private company with airline backing, which established in the Kimberleys a killing and freezing works on Glenroy Station. The aim was to overcome the grueling 6 weeks droving trek to the coastal abattoirs 200 miles away, with its inevitable depreciation of the quality and condition of meat on the hoof. This way, it's a 1-hour hop in a Bristol freighter. Instead of the long drove, the cattle were quietly mustered and contentedly grazing minutes before reaching the slaughter yards. Only as many required for the day's kill were yarded at a time. In the first season, some 4,000 head of cattle were put through. Loading of the chilled carcasses began at dawn each day, and so efficiently streamlined was the system that the mouth of the freighter was able to swallow 5,000 pounds weight of beef every 15 minutes. With 3 trips a day to Wyndham, a freighter shipped the equivalent of 60 head daily. But it was a hazardous experiment, for nothing could stop Mother Nature interfering. Drought struck, and within 2 years it was estimated that at least 1 million head died in the Northern Territory, the Kimberleys and North Queensland as the result of the complete failure of the monsoonal rains. But air beef survived to assist considerably in the recovery and revival of Australia's overseas markets. A much more stable and congenial climate prevailed at Hayman Island on the Barrier Reef, 600 miles north of Brisbane and 40 miles offshore. July the 4th was a perfect day as 80 guests, including federal and state ministers, were flown to the tropic isle for the opening of Ansett Travel Industries' $500,000 hotel by the then federal treasurer Arthur Fadden, Senator John Armstrong, Sir Earl Page and Reg Ansett, Sir Hudson Fish and Lady Fish. It had taken 2 years to ferry 7,000 tons of building material from the mainland on a barge which carried only 16 tons a trip. The opening ceremony was radioed throughout the Australian network and colour photos flown to many overseas countries in a publicity campaign aimed at luring tourists to Hayman. Plenty of big fish around Hayman, and they're untamed. But in New Zealand, what a life the Dominion eels live with their meals dished up to them. No wonder the trout showed no objection to that personal touch. Yes, it makes you wonder. You've heard of low eels and eye eels. Well, now you've seen tame eels. Why, that's almost a bedtime fish story for fishermen. And if you doubt, don't shout. Here's the trout. On the subject of marine menus, how about this for a vegetarian variety? The newsreel camera was at Middle Park to catch Bert Dean, a 28-years-old Melbourneite, shopping for his breakfast. First, a flagon of tasty salt water. Then a few flotsam-flavoured morsels from the beach, and hey presto, seaweed salad, garnished with a raw egg. And there goes the egg, shell and all. For 5 years, Bert stuck to his sea diet. Never been sick. Amazing. And he's a married man with a wife and 3 squids. At Bondi Beach, Mrs. Blanche Sells had spent donkey's years training monkeys for circuses and vaudeville acts. They had a barrel of fun. This little month-old orphan had known no other mother than Mrs. Sells, hence the display of affection, and at eating time he voted for a wet ticket. The bottle had to do a 2-way stretch at times. If he didn't get his share, you could hear his yells. Hell's bells, Mrs. Sells. And if it's noise you want, the band of the Royal Papuan Constabulary heralded the approach of a detachment of native police to Sydney's Government House. Governor, Lieutenant General Northcott, inspected the colourful corps before the visitors set about recording their first visit to Sydney on film. Three months after his promotion to the rank of Field Marshal, the Chief of the Imperial General Staff, Sir William Slim, flew from England for discussions on joint British, Australian, New Zealand defence planning.
I suppose while you're in Melbourne, sir, you'll renew some old acquaintances?
Oh, yes, I shall renew some very old acquaintances. I first met the Australian soldier in Gallipoli in 1915. And ever since then, I've kept a very firm resolution that if ever I was in trouble, I should like to have him on my side.
Known affectionately to the 14th British Army in Burma as Uncle Bill, he was knighted in the field by Lord Wavell in 1944, within earshot of enemy gunfire. Which brings us to Centennial Park and the guns of the Royal Australian Artillery. Under the direction of Eugene Goosens, they provided percussion effects for the Sydney Symphony Orchestra. It was Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture, originally written for open-air presentation to the accompaniment of cannon. "25,000 music lovers enthusiastically applaud this striking and novel presentation in a natural amphitheatre in 1950. A year to remember.